I can still feel the sting of those rejection emails, one after another. My English? It wasn't just bad. It felt like a giant brick wall between me and my dream job. I'd bomb interviews for roles I knew I was qualified for, all because I just couldn't get my words out right. Then I stumbled onto something, well, a bit weird, really. A simple story. Not a textbook, not some fancy course, but a story. And you know what? That story didn't just help my English. It actually got me the job I thought was completely out of reach. Introduction: The Dream and the Barrier. My name is Maria, and just like a lot of you watching, I had big dreams. I'd poured years into studying, getting good at my craft, and I knew deep down I was capable. The snag? The professional world, especially for the jobs I wanted, demanded really good English, particularly in interviews. And in those super high-pressure moments, all those phrases I'd practiced would just vanish. Poof. My accent would get thicker. My grammar would decide to take a vacation, and my confidence? Non-existent. I was aiming for a project management role at a big multinational tech company. Think competitive, fast-paced, the kind of place that needed top-notch communication. Skills I had in my native language, but they'd pack their bags and leave the second an interviewer said, "So, Maria, tell me about yourself." Every failed interview felt like a personal blow, like proof that my English was always going to hold me back. I'd spend days prepping, memorizing answers to all the usual suspects. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Or, why do you want to work here? I'd research companies like a detective, knowing their mission and values inside out. But then, in the room, or on that video call, anxiety would just steamroll me. I'd talk way too fast, desperate to get the words out before I forgot them, which probably just made me even harder to understand. The rejections kept coming, and honestly, so did my frustration. Section 1. Echoes of Failure. The struggle intensifies. I remember one interview so clearly. It still makes me cringe a bit. It was for a role I was so excited about. I'd prepared for weeks. I knew that company like the back of my hand. I even jotted down key buzzwords from the job description. Then the interviewer asked me about a challenging project I'd managed. My mind went blank. In my head, the story was perfect, clear, structured, impressive. But what actually came out? A jumbled mess. I stumbled, used all the wrong tenses, and paused for what felt like an eternity. The interviewer was polite, bless them, but I saw that look, that flicker of not quite getting it, maybe even a little impatience. Another time, an interviewer hit me with a behavioral question, something about dealing with a tricky team member. I knew about the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. I even had my example ready to go. But under pressure, I completely messed up the order, forgot key details, and my result sounded so weak and unconvincing. It was just plain humiliating. I wasn't just failing to impress. I felt like I was totally misrepresenting what I could actually do. My nerves made my English sound way worse than it was when I was just chatting normally. I'd leave those interviews replaying every single mistake, every mispronounced word, every shaky answer. That dream job felt like it was on another planet. I seriously started to wonder if I should just give up on any role that needed such good English in the interview itself. It was a pretty dark time, filled with a ton of self-doubt. Was I not smart enough? Was my English just fundamentally broken when the pressure was on? Section 2. The accidental discovery. A story unfolds. After one particularly soul-crushing rejection, I was just scrolling online, looking for another quick fix to improve my English for interviews. I'd tried everything. Apps, online courses, conversation partners, you name it, I'd probably done it. Nothing seemed to really click in that high-stakes interview setting. Then I stumbled on an article. It wasn't about grammar rules or endless vocabulary lists. It was about the power of stories, specifically graded readers, for learning a language. It talked about how stories could help you absorb language structures and new words in a much more natural way by seeing them in context. Curiosity piqued. I dug a bit deeper and found a mention of a collection of stories written for intermediate English learners, but with a cool twist. One story in particular really grabbed me. It wasn't specifically an interview guide, but it was about this character. Let's call him David, who was navigating professional challenges, all in English. Think of it like some learning examples you see, perhaps with a character named Anna in an interview situation. This David was similar. He was getting ready for important meetings and presentations. The story wasn't just about what David did. It was woven with the exact kind of language he used, how he structured his thoughts, how he handled tricky questions, and even how he built connections with people. It wasn't a boring list of tips. It was a real narrative. As David in the story prepared for his meetings, he'd researched the companies, just like I was always told to do. He'd think about his key achievements and how to present them. Sound familiar? Tell me about yourself, prep, anyone. The story even went into his internal monologue, his anxieties, and then this was the gold part, his strategies for beating them. He'd practice speaking clearly and at a steady pace. If he didn't understand something in the story's dialogue, he'd ask for clarification. A tiny detail, but something I was always terrified to do in a real interview. What made it a graded story was that the language was just right, accessible enough for me to understand, but still challenging enough to push me. It wasn't baby talk, but it also didn't have those super complex sentences or weird idioms that just tie your brain in knots. It felt different because it wasn't some dry textbook. It was an engaging story I could actually get lost in. I wasn't just learning English. I was kind of experiencing successful communication through David. Section 3. The story's magic, from page to performance. So, I started reading David's story every single day. Not like it was homework, but because I was genuinely invested in his journey. And slowly, almost without me even noticing, things started to shift. First off, the language actually began to stick. Seeing words and phrases used in context, over and over, but naturally within the story, helped me lock them in way better than any flashcard ever could. Words like customer satisfaction, technical support, or phrases for politely disagreeing or asking for more information, they became part of my active vocabulary because David used them. It was like the story was showing me how to use these in real situations, much like those Anna's interview story examples try to do. Second, the story was like a masterclass in effective communication. When David faced a tough question in a meeting, the story would explain how he took a quick pause, gathered his thoughts, and then answered calmly and clearly. This was a game changer for me. I'd always felt this immense pressure to answer instantly. The story showed me the power of just taking a beat. It also showed how David would structure his explanations using a natural storytelling flow, which was basically a more organic, less robotic version of the STAR method. He'd describe a situation, what he needed to do, the actions he took, and the positive results, all wrapped up in a compelling little mini-story. Third, and this was probably the biggest thing, it built my confidence. Reading about David's initial nervousness and then seeing him nail it by using these strategies made me feel like, hey, maybe I can do this too. It was like having a mentor walking me through it. The story wasn't just about language, it was about mindset. I started to actually visualize myself as David, calm, articulate, and confident. I began to consciously try out what I was learning. I practiced my answers, not by memorizing them word for word, but by trying to structure them as mini-stories, just like David did. I focused on speaking more slowly and deliberately, just like he did in his important meetings. I even practiced asking for clarification on practice questions if they were unclear, just to get comfortable doing it. Then came the day of the big interview, the one for my current dream job. It was with a panel, and they were known for being pretty tough. My heart was absolutely pounding, but this time, something felt different. As they asked the first question, "Maria, tell us about yourself," instead of that usual wave of panic, David's narrative kind of echoed in my mind. I took a breath, smiled, and started my story, my own story, but told with this newfound clarity and structure. When they hit me with a challenging behavioral question, I didn't freeze. I remembered how David handled similar situations, and I framed my answer using that natural, clear, star-like narrative flow. I talked about my multilingual skills not just as a random fact, but as a real benefit to the company, explaining how it could help with their international clients. I made sure to really listen to every question before I even thought about speaking. The interview went on for over an hour. There were tough questions, follow-up questions, moments where I really had to think on my feet. But through it all, I felt this sense of calm and control I'd never, ever experienced before in an English interview. I wasn't just reciting lines. I was actually communicating. A week later, the phone rang. I got the job. Section 4. A new chapter, the reward. Walking into my new office on that first day felt totally surreal. The journey had been so long and, at times, really tough, filled with massive self-doubt. But that one graded story, that slightly unconventional narrative approach, had been the key. It didn't just unlock my English. It unlocked my confidence. It wasn't actual magic, of course. It was about finding a method that really clicked with how I learned best, and then sticking with it. The biggest change wasn't just landing the job, it was the complete shift in how I approached communicating in English. I no longer dreaded meetings or presentations. Those strategies I'd picked up from David's story, being clear, structured, calm, and really listening, they were now just part of my professional toolkit. My colleagues saw me as a confident communicator, and that, in turn, just boosted my own belief in myself. Turns out, the magic was finding a way to make the learning process itself engaging and directly useful for the challenges I was facing. The story was like a bridge between knowing what I should do and actually being able to do it under pressure. Section 5. Unlocking your own interview magic. Key takeaways. So, what can you take away from my experience? From Maria's little story of going from fumbling in English to actually acing a tough interview? First, get this. Traditional learning methods don't work for everyone, especially not for high-pressure cookers like job interviews. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to look for something a bit different, something unconventional. For me, a story-based approach, a graded reader, was the ticket. It helped me truly internalize language and strategies in a way that memorizing stuff never, ever could. Second, really focus on those core principles of clear communication that the story helped me nail. Do your homework on the company and the role. Seriously, research them thoroughly so you can tailor your answers and show you're genuinely interested. Prepare for common questions, sure, but don't just memorize answers like a robot. Practice expressing them naturally, like you're having a conversation. And please, speak slowly and clearly. Use language that's direct and easy for anyone to understand. Third, embrace storytelling in your answers, especially for those behavioral questions. The STAR method is a fantastic framework, no doubt, but think of it as crafting a short, compelling mini-story that really shows off your skills. And remember, if you're multilingual or have unique cultural insights, those are strengths. Make sure to highlight them. Finally, confidence comes from preparation and practice. Yes, but it also comes from finding a method that makes you feel genuinely empowered. Whether it's a graded story like mine, practicing with a supportive friend, or some other technique altogether, find what helps you internalize not just the words, but that feeling of successful communication. And don't be shy about politely asking for clarification if you don't understand a question. It shows you're paying attention and that you want to give the best possible answer. If my story hit home for you, or if you've had similar battles with English in interviews, I'd love to hear about it. Please share your experiences in the comments below. What strategies have worked for you? What are your biggest challenges right now? And hey, if you found this helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more insights on navigating your career path with confidence. Who knows, maybe there's a graded story out there just waiting to help you shine too. Remember, your English level today doesn't dictate your future success. My English was pretty bad. I faced rejection after rejection, but finding the right approach, that one slightly unusual story, honestly changed everything for me. Keep searching for what works for you, keep practicing, and really believe in your ability to beat those interview nerves. You absolutely can get hired, and you can land that dream position. Thanks so much for watching.